feel like after that prayer at the end of Children's Story and the song that followed, I don't know if we need a sermon. Help everyone to be kind all the time to everyone. I long for a world like that. And then every day with Jesus. Well, that's how we do it. So right there, you've got a sermon. Thank you, kids. And you want to know something amazing about these kids? Thursday night, they had their concert. Yesterday, I was at their school, and they had chapel. They sing this good every day. That was just beautiful. Thank you so much. And it is great having schools visit, isn't it? I don't know what your week was like, but mine was long. And it started off on a bad note. You see, my phone had just been acting up. Like, it was bulging, which is never good. And then the battery would die. And when I would say it would die, like I would charge it on my drive to the church and walk into my office. And by the time I got to my office, it would be down to 50%. And so, like, phone calls became difficult. Like, I had to be plugged in. I felt like a child again, back when phones had to be plugged in. And so I took it to the Apple store, which is never a fun process. It's not a fun process because you have to go to someone and refer to them as a genius. It's not a fun process because you have to sit there waiting. And it's not a fun process because you have to pay for it. Finally, the young genius came up to me and he was talking through it. And as he was talking to me, I realized something I didn't like. Maybe it was my white hair. Maybe it was the fact that the demographic of people who come in first thing on Monday morning. I don't know, but he was talking to me like I was an elderly person. And without thinking about it, I responded accordingly. You see, he was trying to get me to pay extra money for cloud storage so that my phone could be backed up, and I was explaining to him that there were other ways to back up that didn't cost me money. And he said, "No, I don't believe that's true." And I said, "Well, it is true. Maybe it was just before your time." And I realized he was talking to me like an old person, and I was talking to him as though I were an old person. And when the two happened simultaneously, I realized maybe what was wrong here was my picture of who I am. We all have pictures of who we are, and they're not all accurate, are they? We realize this. I mean, you can't help but realize it as you walk across the campus of Andrews University thinking, wow, these students get younger every year. But they don't. Just the age gap seems to have broadened. Our pictures of ourselves aren't always true. Other people have pictures of us also. They're also not always true. People often look at us and figure out who we are without getting to know us, and they don't always get it right. And even when they don't get it right, sometimes we take the things they say about us and we internalize that as who we are. But as you read through the Bible, you realize the person who has the craziest picture of who we are is not ourselves, it's not other people, it's actually God. God has a false picture of who we are. Did you know that? I mean, you see it with Gideon. Gideon is hiding in the winepress threshing grain because you're not supposed to be in the winepress at that time of year. And so he knew this was a safe place to hide. And he's hiding in there, trying to get a little bit of food together. And an angel appears and refers to him as a mighty warrior. Well, that's not real. And Abraham, before he was Abraham, he was Abram. And you realize when you read through the Bible, those family lines are increasingly important because that's your identity, that's who you are, where you fit into history, all was based on your family line. And Abram was the end of the line. And if you're the end of the line, you become insignificant. You stop mattering moving forward because you're never going to be in a genealogy if you're the end of the line. And Abram is the end of the line. And here in Genesis 12, God comes up to him and he calls him and says, I'm going to make you into a great nation. God sees someone who is the end of the line and talks to them like they're the beginning of an empire. And I love this about God because when he has a false picture of us, he has the ability to change reality. I don't need to know what your picture is of yourself. I don't need to know what other people think about who you are. Who does God think you are? Have you asked yourself that recently? How does God see you? When God looks at you, what is his picture of you? His child? I love that this is the theme at Niles this year. Child of God. Can you imagine if every day we woke up realizing that was our identity? A child of God? That would change our day, wouldn't it? That would change the way we look at ourselves. It would change the way we treat other people. It would change the world. And the craziest thing wasn't the fact that God looked at Abram and said, you're the beginning of an empire. The crazy thing is Abram believed him. And this is the thing. To accept God's picture of you, you have to believe it. God doesn't change our reality unless we let him. Do you believe that you're a child of God? Do you believe his picture of you? Or are you still falling for that false picture of self that you've built up? That one where I don't have gray hair. But I love that God, when he gives us a picture of how he sees us, he then invites us to go. He did it with Abram. He did it with the disciples. He did it with Gideon. And he does it with us too. We for too long have worked with a false picture of how ministry should work. Because we somehow believe that if we make our church beautiful enough, and the Connect 4 project is great, and we definitely need to do it, a beautiful church does matter. But we've operated as though if our church is beautiful enough, if our worship service is engaging enough, if we're friendly enough, if we're welcoming enough, then people will come. That's never been Jesus' model of ministry. Thank goodness. Because if Jesus had have said, okay, I'm going to prepare a place for you in heaven, and when you got it together enough, you just come, we'd never make it. Jesus always has gone. And so as followers of his, he's inviting us to go. We cannot just sit here in church waiting for people to come to us. We've got to go to them. We've got to reach out to our neighbors. We've got to reach out to people who are no longer attending. We've got to reach out to our kids and to our families. Because waiting isn't ministry. We need to accept God's picture of us. And we've got to be willing to go where he sends us. What is God's picture of you? Where is God asking you to go? And the last thing I love here is God makes this incredible promise of blessing. I will bless you and make your name great, and you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and anyone who curses you I will curse. And all the families on the earth shall be blessed. I love that here God is promising not just to bless Abram and his family, but to bless the entire earth through Abram. When we accept God's picture of us, when we go where he is sending us, it allows him to bless those around us through us. Which makes sense because when we realize God's picture of us is his child, that means he's dwelling in us, isn't it? And then when we interact with those around us, when we go where he sends us, it gives them the ability to interact with God. They're blessed when we go. But so often, when we think about blessings, we think about ourselves as being the recipients. We ask God to bless us. We ask God to bless our families. We ask God to bless our church. We ask God to bless our schools. We ask God to bless our nation. It's all about us being the recipients. But you see, when you do blessings like that, there's a limit to how much we can hold, isn't there? But instead, when you ask God to bless those through you, you don't become the container of the blessing, you become the conduit of the blessing. And when you're the conduit of the blessing, then the blessings aren't stopping. They have to keep coming. New blessings every single day. And it allows God to continually bless you because those blessings are flowing right through you. What are the ways God has been blessing you? What are the ways God has blessed your life, your family. How could we be sharing those blessings with those around us? Those who are hurting, those who are suffering. Growing up, there were 4 of us in the Martin house. I had 2 older brothers. And somehow it worked out that we were 3 grades in a row. So teachers saw us coming. We were all different, but we were all trouble. And it really came to a head when my oldest brother was in the 8th grade. My next brother, Richard, was in the 7th, and I was in the 6th. It was the day of 8th grade graduation. I don't know what inspired Richard to do this, but he did not like his math teacher. And so he took a knife and he slashed all 4 of the teacher's tires. Which was bad enough, but it gets worse, because that was the day of 8th grade graduation. My father was the speaker. And so on the day that this happened, he had to stand up in front of the whole community and smile. That teacher, Mr. Christoph, he made it clear that my brother Richard had to pay for it. But I love the way he did this because he put on some very clear stipulations to how it worked. He said, okay, Richard, you're going to have to pay for this. So you have to spend every day all summer working for me. And so that summer, Richard went in every single day to school. He and Mr. Christoph spent the day together. And at the end of the summer, Richard's favorite teacher was Mr. Christoph. And they had created a bond that lasted. And I think that is such a beautiful picture of Adventist education. But it's also a beautiful picture of what it means when we realize God's picture of us. When we realize that, and we allow God's blessings to flow through us into other people's lives. As we think about who God has called us to be, I think sometimes it's easy to be comfortable here at Stevensville because we've got a beautiful church. We've got an incredible church family. I look forward every Sabbath to spending time together, and it's lovely. And sometimes when things are like that, we want to keep them just the way they are. But that's not how God's picture works. God has a picture of us that is better than how things currently are. God has a picture where he's calling us to go and to bless those around us. As we think about the fact that in 1967 this church was planted here in Stevensville, I'm going to be honest, the roots are still in Berrien Springs, aren't they? It's never really taken ground here. We've got to change that. God is calling us to go to Stevensville. God's calling us to reach the people here. God is calling us to bless, to make a difference to those we interact with. So what are we going to do? Are we going to be comfortable with the picture we've gotten used to? Or are we going to ask God, who do you see me as? God, where are you sending me? God, who do I need to bless today?